Hey friends, my guest today is a very talented musician and artist. I was fortunate enough to make music with him many years ago, and he's still at it, producing new songs and releasing a new album this September. You can find him on Instagram at Galen.Ballinger, so check it out. I have nothing but love and respect for this fine young man, and I am so glad he joined me today as we traveled down some wormholes. Here he is, Galen Ballinger.
It's a trip having a conversation with your voice so well in your ears.
Yes, right in there. Yeah, this is so cool because the reason I enjoy it so much is because I've known you for a long time, but I've never just sat with you and talked to you for 2 hours straight. You know, there's so many distractions these days. You don't ever really have like a real conversation with somebody. And so good things can come out of it that you didn't really expect, you know?
Totally. It's a lost art, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to start with, I always think about like what cool topics to bring up, you know. The purpose is not to ever have like a true routine or a true set schedule. I just like it to kind of go wherever it goes, but I always have to like try to come up with something that can get it rolling.
Sure.
And with you, I mean, you are a musician and you've been playing for a long time. And the coolest thing for me when I met you is when I met you, I was in high school and you were probably like, I don't know, 14, 15 maybe.
I think I was a freshman when you would have been a junior, right?
Yeah.
Junior, senior.
Yeah. When I started coming over to your house. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had,
I don't know how old that is.
Somewhere in there, somewhere between 13 and 20. You, as far as I remember, had not played anything ever.
Mostly true. There was a required band class at good old St. Mary's Academy. So I was in it was like they give you your choice of instruments, and my picks were bass clarinet or saxophone. And they're like, why don't we'll give you clarinet, like see how you do with that. And so I never really played it. You know, it was a big enough section. It was just I was in the section where we just held clarinets, and there was like the two people who actually played.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just kind of hid in there and moved your fingers around a little bit?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Until I got little highlight moment at the end there where the school got some timpanis. I can't remember. I know we did the 1812 overture where there's like a cannon. It's actually written 4 cannons to be firing from these 4 corners. And so in that setting where you can't have cannons.
Why not?
In the Catholic Church. The part is written for timpani. So you're basically counting, 40 something measures of rest and then just come in with these. I don't know if I ever nailed it, but that was fun to hit some drums. But yeah, not really, no.
So you were supposed to be playing the clarinet, but you switched to timpani?
Yeah, switched to timpani at the end when we got a set.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, that was the other thing I was thinking about the other day as I'm just going back through memories. And I was thinking about St. Mary's School. And it didn't hit me until recently that was a Catholic school. And in the Dalles, that seems unique. There were so many elementary schools, and that was the only Catholic school.
Yeah, that I'm aware of. I never understood all the school systems. I mean, my dad went to that school. All of his 8 siblings went to that school. All of the 4 kids in my family went to that school. It was just school in my mind, you know. And by the time, you know, my dad had nuns teaching him when he went through there. By the time I went there, it really didn't feel like a Catholic school. A lot of the teachers were not even Catholic. That wasn't even part of it. So, but it was a good school. I mean, it was small classes. It was a private school, so it was, you know, I think fairly well funded. And yeah, I definitely had to wake up to whatever quality education it did provide when I hit high school, and was like, holy shit. Like I did this in 7th and 8th grade, and now I'm in high school. Like, what am I doing here? Which kind of led to me leaving high school. Yeah. My sophomore year. I was like, this really feels like a waste of time, on top of the social aspect of high school I didn't really enjoy.
It wasn't your thing.
No.
And because what reason? You just felt like you weren't getting anything out of it?
Yeah, I definitely didn't feel academically interested or whatever. And that's not to say the opportunity wasn't there. I don't know how much I put into it. I think I had kind of lost interest. And socially just wasn't connecting to my peers in that place at that time at all.
Did you feel like you connected more when you were at St. Mary's? Like, were you able to relate to people more in that school?
That's a good question. I think I kind of felt like an alien throughout. There is something that happens, though, where in St. Mary's, I don't know the exact number, but I think the class size usually hovered somewhere around 20 students. And a lot of those were starting in kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. So whether or not you're, you know, best friends with these people or have everything in common, there's just a natural bond, you know, from spending that many years in that kind of intimate setting together, that, you know, you feel a part of something.
Yeah.
And I did have good friends there for sure. But even those friendships, I think in high school, everything opened up and people were able to kind of go deeper into the little social groups that they were more interested in.
Sure.
And for me, yeah, there really wasn't one there. So,
did they have any focus on the scripture? Like, was that a part of daily learning?
No, not to my recollection. I remember off and on, they would try and implement a class called religion. It was religion class. And to my memory, it was always kind of a failing endeavor. You know, they'd get a new person. Either it was like a new priest who would come in or just someone separate who would teach this religion class. And it wasn't taken that seriously, and it was maybe once a week. And it was kind of the time kids put their head down on the desk. It was not an engaging class. And other than that, the only religious focus was, I think it was Monday mornings, the whole school went to mass.
Did you guys walk across the street to the church?
It was right there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd all walk across the street. But the thing about that is, it was like, oh, Monday morning, you just come a little bit late. You maybe hide in the bushes, whatever it is. I mean, I walked to school most of my Catholic school career.
Did you walk with all the kids from the family?
Probably at some point.
And so they saw you ditching off in the bushes?
Then we dispersed, you know? Yeah. I would definitely hide those things out. I did a lot of hiding. Band would always be a morning class. Sometimes I'd skip that one out. I would just hide in the stairways and listen to the band from the stairway. And then I could hear when it was done, and the class would come up and be headed towards the classroom, and I'd just jump in line with them and join the class. Yeah.
They didn't get to hear the timpani on the 1812 those days.
No.
Yeah.
There's a hole in it.
Yeah. When you're young and impressionable like that, I think it's easier for them to attempt to get you excited about something and to get you involved in the religious aspect. And even if you're not going to a religious school,
right?
Those young minds, you can form them the way that you want to. Mm-hmm. And if you are able to reach somebody at that age, maybe potentially they're going to go down that path. But I think once you get a little bit older, if you start questioning things, then it's a little different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that the school's focus really was education, and there wasn't, no one was trying to impose any religious ideal on anyone. You know, I think most of the religious, spiritual exposure I had really happened at home, mm-hmm. you know, and in the community of my family and the community around that. School was just, I don't know, it just wasn't that way.
That's what's so unique, though, about... I know your parents, and I don't know them that well, but I know them as very intelligent humans who tend to question.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to follow with the people that I know that they would send you down that path. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think they were definitely questioning Catholics at the time. I think for them, it was still the community they were familiar with. And I really think for them, it was an educational choice, you know? I mean, it was also a big deal, you know, financially. I mean, we were the poor kids in school a lot of the time. I definitely had that feeling. And I know it was a challenge for, you know, my parents to pull that off, sending 4 kids. But I think they believed, if even just down to smaller classroom size, that there would be better educational opportunities there. And I think that's what it was about. I don't think it was religious too much. But also, you know, something I remember my dad saying was that their choice to like expose us kids in this Catholic faith when we were young was kind of just a way to expose us to concepts of like spiritual thinking in general. And it didn't have to be a path we followed, you know, and there wasn't pressure to like become Catholic, but it was more like just being around the language or traditions of, you know, thinking spiritually.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's, you know, my parents haven't gone to that church in a very long time. Mm-hmm. None of us kids continued that.
Yeah, that's what's really cool about your whole family is your parents and all 3 of your siblings, and you included, you guys are all super deep thinkers who don't follow anyone's path. And I think that's part of the way that your parents brought you up and part of the way that you just began to question the world. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, your family's very unique.
I think there was some kind of influence of that, you know, mm-hmm. definitely from both my parents of, just encouraging freedom of thought, which I really, really appreciate. I think it's also been confusing at certain times. You know, there's times where I've looked to. It's given me an attraction to like regimented like rule-based systems often, you know, for sure. Because I think it can be sometimes exhausting to exist in a constantly critical, questioning space.
Yeah.
But I absolutely deeply appreciate both my parents, just encouragement of that, and that was like a value to them, you know, was for their kids to explore their own values, you know,
sure.
figure out what that is.
Sure.
Which is constant for any of us. And you come to realize, I mean, it is. There have been moments in my adult life where I think I've wanted to land at some plateau of understanding and just relax with my rule system or dogma or whatever it is and be like, all right, like I figured it out. But it's not that way. It'll never be that way.
Yeah.
And definitely growing up in that scenario, I'm not someone who probably would even be comfortable or honest for me to fall into something like that.
Sure. Yeah. So I didn't meet your brother until I think he was a senior and I was a junior. And so that's when I started coming over and hanging out and playing music and everything. Yeah. And so this is a roundabout way of getting to you. As far as I remember, didn't ever play guitar. And then all of a sudden you started playing and you're just like this Rain Man virtuoso that do you know how to read music? No. You just picked up a guitar and started playing and it was like you knew what you were doing instantly. And it was insane. Your brother's like, oh yeah.
I've never felt like I know what I'm doing on an instrument.
Well, it looks like you do.
I never want to feel that way.
It looks like you do. And you just would start playing and your progress was crazy. And
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's hard to remember that journey. I mean, I remember what's interesting now is I've started playing mostly nylon string guitar.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, and I've got my dad's old nylon string, which is the guitar that I would have started on in high school, just playing around. It was the guitar in the house.
Uh-huh.
You know, it was his church guitar. That's how I thought of it. That's what it sounded like.
Yeah.
And, you know, I definitely remember, trying to learn how to play like Black Sabbath riffs, like quietly somewhere in the house on like the holy nylon string church guitar. And that's where I started playing around. And then I bought my first electric from Paul Taylor.
Mm-hmm. It was a Stratocaster, wasn't it?
It was a white Stratocaster with a maple neck, just like Jimi Hendrix played at Woodstock.
Uh-huh.
Which you also had a very similar guitar.
I still got it.
Do you? I still have that one too. It has about 8 layers of paint on it, though. It's not white anymore. I've painted it many times.
Yeah.
But, so that I got that electric guitar, but then I didn't have an amp for I think years still. I would play you remember the basement where you guys played in?
Oh yeah.
So the wall from mine and Ben's bedroom that we shared to that room was hollow. It was an uninsulated interior wall. And it was hollow, and I remember if I put the neck of the guitar against it. You ever done this? An electric guitar, you just lean the head of it against the wall. It amplifies the sound. The vibrations vibrate through the whole wall.
Yeah.
It wasn't an amplifier, but it sounded like, there's some like kind of distortion to it.
Yeah.
It was louder, basically. So that was my guitar journey.
And so did you realize at some point that was something that spoke to you that you wanted to continue doing?
I think immediately. I think even before I started playing, there was a certain interest. I mean, just as a music listener and lover, especially the music I was listening to, the electric guitar is this thing that is pretty obvious migration towards, and I don't think I ever thought about whether it made sense or not. It was just, it was something I wanted to do and started doing.
Yeah.
And kept doing.
Yeah. For me, it was, everybody has the thing that they aspire to, or that they think they can do. Kids want to be an astronaut, or they want to be a fireman, or you're just trying to figure it out. And I witness it right now with my 3 kids. They're constantly changing. Like, my daughter was way into Hunger Games, and so she wanted to be the main character from Hunger Games. And then now she's into this other movie set where it's like just like girl power, where she is in charge and she's taking control, And I remember being a kid and I wanted so bad to be a baseball player.
Okay.
And I was awful. And it took me a long time to figure it out. Right. And so I finally got to high school. I got to freshman year and I bought a guitar from Irvin and I started playing. And that's when I realized like, this fits. Yeah, I was like, this is the thing I'm actually good at.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was a huge transition for me to, there's a difference between enjoying something and wanting to do it, and then finding something that you're actually good at and continuing to do it.
Totally. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think I was pretty private about my music, so I don't think I had there wasn't a lot of like feedback or validation about it, so I don't think I really knew where I stood. I didn't know if I was good at this thing or not. It was just kind of something I started doing obsessively. But I guess for me it was a similar handoff, where it was like early on it was basketball, and I would just come home, play basketball by myself for 5 hours every single night. I'd make up teams 3-on-3 of like the top NBA stars, and I'd be out there like,
You were all 6 members?
All 6 at once, and then it was skateboarding. Yeah. Skateboarding was something where I never got anywhere with that.
Yeah.
At all.
I did that too. Yeah.
Yeah. I just got hurt a lot. And then I think music was kind of the next thing after that. But in some way, you were talking about your kids jumping from these things. I still feel that way. I'm 34 years old now, and I have that kind of thing, every 6 months. I still cycle through, but guitar is something that's been very consistent.
It's that thing you can go back to.
Yeah, it's just a consistent part of it. And I think how I approach it, I think that's what's cool about music, is it's something you can have different ideas about and translate them musically. So whatever you're really excited about, there's probably a way to play guitar that way or approach music that way.
I hear what you're saying, and I think some people are drawn to it and they just can't figure it out. And some people it's like it's written in the cards almost, or something like that. Because I wanted to get to the act of creativity and the act of being a painter and coming up with something, or being a poet and coming up with something, or being a guitar player and writing some chord progression that is really good. Right. And I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but there's a bunch of people that I've read this idea from, and the most famous one, or the most pertinent one, I think was John Lennon. It might have been McCartney, but I think it was Lennon, where he just said basically he was a conduit. Mm-hmm. He didn't know where those ideas came from. Right. He just sat in a bedroom, and all of a sudden he had written this #1 song.
Totally.
And that's a crazy idea or that's a crazy concept that you cannot be fully responsible for some creative act. It's just like you're just able to tap into something that someone else can't.
Yeah, I mean, I love that concept for a lot of reasons, and there's a lot of notable and prolific artists in all fields have said similar things. Something I remember was pointed out to me one time was even the way we use the word genius. Where we're like, oh, that person is a genius. They might be a musical genius or a math genius. And I might have this, historically wrong, but the way it was explained to me was when that term was used in like ancient Greece, it wasn't said that person is a genius. It was they have a genius. As in, they are tied into whatever that source thing is. They're tapped in. And that makes a lot of sense to me. And it also alleviates the pressure of like, it isn't you. It isn't this ego. It isn't this thing you work at. And I think that's something I really try and keep in all creativity, whether it's painting or playing music, is like, for me, it should always be play, like guitar isn't something I've ever worked at. I've never, made my fingers bleed doing scales or tried to learn the whole repertoire of my favorite songwriters thing or whatever. I'm just, I think I'm maybe generally lazy in that regard. And also, I move towards things that, work for me quickly and easily or intuitively. And if they don't, I lose interest quickly. And so I try and follow things that way. And therefore it's like, I don't think like the guitar isn't something that should ever be practiced. And if a kid wants to play guitar, don't make them practice it, let them play it. Let them just fucking play around with it. Mm-hmm. Excuse my language. And I think that's where you really, you discover a lot of things, and you can discover what your intuitions lead you towards, what you're naturally good at. But I also have respect for the other side. That's just not who I am. There are people who are dedicated, diligent, and they learn things and get really good at them. And I have immense respect for those people. I'm not one of those people.
Yeah, I've come up with things that I'm super proud of. And also I've spent hours playing something and nothing comes of it. Like the moment that you try to sit down and write something, you'll be there for hours doing nothing. Like that's the thing that I can't explain. I don't know if anybody can explain. Sometimes there's this cool story. I know it was Keith Richards, but what I think happened is he was sleeping and he woke up in the middle of the night, and he always had a guitar next to him. Yeah. And I think he came up with Satisfaction. He woke up, came up with the lick for it. And God, I should have researched it more. I read his autobiography, and I think he woke up, came up with it, and he recorded it somehow, and then he went back to sleep, and he didn't even know that he did it.
Yeah.
And that's crazy that something can just come to you from somewhere else. And I mean, that's one of the most famous songs ever, and he didn't even know he really did it.
Well, I think that also ties into the understanding that your subconscious is working on things all the time. I believe that. And there can be a lot of value in not overworking things or pushing it, playing guitar for 8 hours a day for 3 weeks will totally get you somewhere. Not playing guitar for 8 hours a day for 3 weeks, when you pick it up, also might be really interesting.
Yeah.
And also might lead to discoveries that you're more open to, because you're not worked into this rut, just digging this thing. And sleep is that way, where your brain is working these things out.
Yeah. Do you ever do that? Just wake up and write down what you had going on in your brain instantly?
Not often. I've gone through periods of that book. Is it The Artist's Way? Do you know this book?
Mm-mm.
Has a practice like that, where it's called morning pages, and I can't remember how it works, but basically, immediately upon waking, you just write whatever comes out for 15 minutes or whatever it is, and you don't even look at it.
Yeah.
No, I don't do that very often.
It's hard to get into the practice of doing it.
Yeah.
I started doing it during COVID because I was I was starting to sleep in more.
Yeah.
We
all were.
I didn't have a reason I had to get up.
Right.
And so I'd hit the snooze fucking 20 times in a row.
Yep.
And when I finally did get up, I'd write down whatever was going on in my brain.
Yeah.
And that's the weird thing about dreams too, is that I think some people are better able to recall them.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, if something wakes me up,
mm-hmm.
it's gone instantly.
Interesting.
I have to go back into it.
Yeah.
To rehash it or something.
Yeah. I've never dream journaling or whatever. That's not something I've ever done, because the value of dreams or just the way that I experience dreams, sometimes there's the funny story, that's worth mentioning. But a lot of times dreams are more that place where language kind of falls short, and it's more about this feeling. And if you were to explain the scenario, it's like, I was at work and it was me, but it wasn't me, and it's just it's so subtle, but the feeling, oops, sorry.
That's right.
The feeling is what it's all about. And you might feel it all day, or something happens halfway through the day and you feel that dream again. But you can't really write that down.
Well, and it's never as interesting to someone else as it is to you.
Yeah.
Whenever somebody starts to tell you their dream, you're like, dude, I don't care.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
Cool. Some crazy shit happened in your brain while you're sleeping.
I never believe people too. Dreams, not never, but I think that's also, it sometimes becomes a way I think people can express things that they can't otherwise own in waking life,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, I had a dream about this or this.
Well, have you ever read Freud?
Mm-mm.
His whole thing was, every single dream you ever have is wish fulfillment.
Okay.
You are, in one way or another, fulfilling a wish that
mm-hmm.
your waking brain may or may not be able to accomplish. Even if, your grandma gets killed in your
right.
dream, there's some reason deep in your psyche that you wanted that to happen.
Right. You're exploring that option or whatever.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think that makes sense. I think, definitely a lot of dreams I can see where it's a place I'm sorting some kind of feeling out,
mm-hmm.
an anxiety or an inspiration, whatever it is. Yeah.
It's a crazy realm, because for as long as we could ever recall or know, people have been dreaming, and no one can explain that. Yeah. Really. I mean, you could study the shit out of it, but nobody can really say why your brain will not shut off.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it continuing to investigate other avenues,
Totally. I mean, I'm equally interested in what you might call daydreaming, or just think about the amount of brain activity, even just in this conversation, what sort of hallucinations and things we've had within our mind, that's something I've always, in thinking about, to go back to creativity and art making, whatever it is, that's something that's always been my desire, is to be able to share that subconscious. So basically, instead of like, oh, I had this vision walking down the street the other day of this blue horse in a field. Should I write a song about it to communicate that to the world? Should I make a painting of it to communicate that to the world? I always want the most streamlined, easiest method, really,
Yeah.
And so, to get all futuristic, a technology I've definitely dreamed about is, the concept to be able to see people's, I guess what is a good term for it? It's the behind the eyes. It's the
yes, the recall of memory.
I think that's the Kurt Cobain name for it.
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about? But he calls it behind the eyes.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do you know much about Neuralink?
No.
Elon Musk and Neuralink?
No.
I don't know a ton about it either, but the concept.
Well, I got $5 on it.
Yeah.
Make it happen.
It's gonna happen.
This shit's terrifying as much as it is exciting.
It's exciting, yeah, but yeah, it's totally terrifying. Hey, have you ever seen any of the Black Mirror episodes?
I've seen a couple.
Mm-hmm. That guy and his team, or whoever's behind writing all that stuff, they come up with some crazy shit.
Yeah.
And there's an episode, I believe it's in the first season, where you're recording everything that you're seeing in real time. So you can go back and view your memories.
I've seen this one.
Yeah.
It's the couple.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And they're at a dinner, and he realizes that she had a thing with the other guy, and it becomes a thing. And so this Neuralink idea that Elon is working on, it's like the width of a human hair. It gets inserted into your brain and connected to your brain. And the original goal for it was to help people who have certain. The best example is people who are paraplegic. Okay, so your arms and your legs don't work.
Right.
It's not because they don't actually work. It's because your brain cannot transmit that signal to them.
Connection, yeah.
Yeah, so you just need something to reconnect them, and then you're cool.
Yeah, electrical current, right?
Exactly.
Basically. So
there's other things that they're working on with Neuralink to help people that have issues with interconnectivity between their brain and other parts of their body. But you could hypothetically insert this computer chip into someone's brain, and then they can fully function again. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's fantastic. But what this also does, there it goes. I thought that might happen at some point.
Let the light in.
So continuing on. So with this computer chip that you have in your brain, you could essentially do the same thing that they're talking about on Black Mirror. Okay, it's
recording.
You could record everything that you are witnessing and feeling, and if that gets stored on hard drive, you could pretend like if it started now and it witnessed the next 20 years of my life, I could go back to this conversation with you and say I see out the window, somebody over here doing something. I could zoom in on that and see what's going on. So you're able to recall memory, not only memories, but situations and activities and all sorts of things that can happen. And from a perspective of wanting to go back and enjoy things that you've done and relive them, it's fantastic. But also it could be a terrible thing.
Yeah, I don't even see a value in that, to be totally honest. A value in
In going back and reliving things that have happened?
I really don't.
No?
Not me personally. And even society-wise, no, I really don't.
But what if you could go back to the first time you kissed a girl?
Every day of my life just gets better and better. No. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting concept, but, you know, I don't have the understanding or even the vocabulary to dive into why that might not register. You know, connecting. It's like, well, what are the ingredients to an experience? You know, there's the feeling of the temperature on all of the nerve endings of your skin. There is whatever synapse is happening in your brain. There's maybe the visual aspect. I mean, to even consider capturing every ingredient of an experience is fascinating, but seems pretty far off. And then you get into the consideration of what if there are missing ingredients there that you know, even Elon Musk or whoever's working on this is overlooking. You know, like, what are the ingredients of this moment right now? I think they are nearly infinite, but it is a really interesting thing to consider. I mean, yeah, we're gonna go into it.
Let's do it.
It reminds me of this concept. I don't know where this came from. Maybe it ties into Catholic school in some
Probably.
way. But from a very young age, I had this vision of like, basically, imagine a calculator where you can, if you had all of that information, basically every ingredient of every scenario that has happened through time, the history of time. My belief was if you added all that up, you could predict the future.
Okay.
We will never be able to gather that amount of information. I mean, we're talking every piece of information of everything. Because I think ultimately why that breaks down is that isn't the universe we live in. That's just how we perceive it. But it is an idea of, you know.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. And that is the exciting thing and the scary aspect of the whole situation is where do you draw the line? What I mean, where do you go? We're sitting here at this table, drinking whiskey, talking. Yeah. We're experiencing this thing.
Yeah.
Is it of value to you or I 20 years from now to come back here and relive this exactly as it happened?
Yeah. Is that an important question, though? That's my question, too. Yeah. I mean, I think we're experiencing that to a degree in a very simplistic way. I mean, I think that's what social media is to a certain degree. That's what any event that feels like memorable to people, what happens? Everyone pulls out the like, capture this, capture it.
Yeah, don't experience it in real time. Capture it on your fucking phone.
So that's like the interesting thing too is I don't know. What is the value of that? And what is the value of the moment, the potential moment you might have had in the future that is lost in trying to dive back into this other thing? And can you really? I don't believe you can. I don't know. That's why I don't see value in that.
That's the whole argument of living in the now, right? Is that you don't focus solely on the past, and you're not completely captivated with the future. You're experiencing right now.
Right.
And
I used to have some Eckhart Tolle CDs in my van.
I got a book right out there in the living room.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
I don't know. That's if if you could ask me what my goal is when I die, it would be to constantly review my life. That is the best I think it could be.
Okay. As far as like, here's your menu of afterlife options. What would you like to do?
Exactly.
You would be like, oh, I just want replay.
Yes. I want a menu.
Yeah.
Of 16 years old,
right.
driving a car, 24.
Right.
My first child is born. If you had the option, that seems like the best option to me, is to relive those things, or at least view them as they happen to me.
Yeah.
And that is the potential that we're talking about. But there's other things that are included in that make it less appealing. If you have every single human in the world recording every moment of their life, like what?
Yeah, I mean, even the experience. I mean, that's something to talk about in our generation. So your experience, 16 years old, driving a car, no one was filming that, right?
No.
You weren't taking that selfie when you got your permit or whatever it is. Maybe a potential richness of that experience is that it's this fleeting, intangible thing.
Yeah, because that's what happens with memory. Is you have some grasp of what that was.
Yeah.
But you change it over time.
Totally.
All the shit I think I did, or the
Right.
things I said to people, that's not what really happened.
Right.
My brain altered it in
Right.
some way. And maybe the truth is not as good.
I wonder. Yeah. I mean, I think it probably goes both ways. I think some memories also wear down in a way that you lose interest, And that would probably happen in your afterlife. So if you chose that for eternity, I mean, how many
You're
times
trying to steer me away from it, huh?
Well, I don't know. How many times you want to drive? What are the other options?
What are the other options?
What are the other eternal options?
What are they?
The option I'm kind of counting on is absolute and total nothingness.
Yeah.
For eternity.
Well, that's a given. That is what it is.
And that's
they're teaching that in Catholic school.
Are they?
No.
I thought I heard it somewhere.
That is.
So I mean,
that's the one that nobody wants to believe is what it is. But that.
Yeah.
Until we learn something new, that is what it is.
Yeah.
Everything else is just a hope.
I don't even think about it that much. Honestly.
I don't either. That's why I'm invested in now.
Right.
I don't give a fuck about later, because I think this is happening.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather enjoy this.
And that's how I feel. I mean, it's really interesting right now, the anxiety around death in constant debate, or just decision making, in our society right now, in the midst of this pandemic. How much focus is, just this swirling death anxiety? Not that it's misplaced or anything, but it is it's a focal point, And it's just interesting to me that it's like, wow, imagine that type of energy focused on quality of life. What if all of a sudden pandemic hits, whatever, there are the tragic consequences of it. And what if everyone stopped and was like, holy shit, like, we got to make the most of this right now,
Yeah.
Like, mortality, knocked on the door a little harder for some people right now. It's really in focus. What are we going to do? Like,
that's what's disappointing, is that people are focusing on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
It is, everything is sensationalist. Everything is clickbait. Everything is what is going to get you to pay attention to what I'm talking about.
Right.
And the disappointing thing is that I don't really trust any source of anything anymore.
Yeah.
Everything has some sort of slant. Everything.
But you trust yourself.
I trust myself, but I'm not physically there in downtown Portland.
Sure.
Where people are blowing shit up.
Right.
This is the epicenter of some crazy stuff right now.
Yeah.
And
I went down there last night.
Did you really? I was going to ask you if, because you live in Northwest, so it's somewhat close, but not.
It's very close. Yeah.
You went down to the federal courthouse, like that area.
Yeah. Early on, oftentimes, the gathering marches away from there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I went down there for just a minute last night and heard some people speaking. And
well, tell me and tell everybody about what's going on then, because there's a lot of things that are being said on the internet.
Yeah, there are a lot of things. Honestly, a part of my going down there is just a part of my existence in human life, which is to participate, but also to just observe and understand. So, because I think most people have a lot of misinformation on this, or just angled information. I don't necessarily want to be spokesperson for like what. I could relate my experience.
Sure.
Yeah, that's all I can really do is yeah.
You're a person. You experienced it, so yeah. You don't have to give a particular view if you don't want to, but you can just say how you witnessed it.
It's also hard for me to, I guess, not inject myself into something like that. But I see a lot of different things, and I also hadn't been down there in weeks, so I've had a physical presence in this a few different times over the last 60 days, basically. Last night, what I witnessed was a pretty eclectic gathering of what seemed like, mostly local people, Portland people, all gathered in the park there. And there were speakers, and yeah, I stayed for maybe 5 different speakers, and a lot of it is crowd interactive.
Mm-hmm.
Someone might start a song. I was there, and it was dusk, so it was hard to see really how big this gathering is. And, some people are uptight, other people are trying to stay kind of sparse on the outside. And so it's a pretty large gathering. And everyone was asked to hold their phones in the air with the light on so that everyone could just kind of look around and see what this sort of, Milky Way we're in. And that was really beautiful. And then someone with a megaphone started singing We Shall Overcome. Got like a few lines into it and put it down. And this sea of people just carries this song. Yeah, I've seen things like that. I've also seen hype and violence, you know. I mean, early on, when curfew was still going down, you know, when they set a curfew on the city, I walked down towards the Justice Center, and just in Pioneer Square, you know, many blocks from the focal point, I saw people get chased through the square there, you know, full on running, with cops with rubber bullets shooting at their backs as they fled the scene. I mean, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to talk about these things because they're so complex, and I don't hear anyone talking about it in a complexity that I'm really even comfortable with. Yeah. And so it's
that's the issue, is that it's so polarized. You're one way or the other.
Right.
And I don't view it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't either. I support people who do have views like that, you know? And I understand like where it's coming from, but you know, even a statement like all cops are bastards, like this thing, isn't a statement that like resonates as a universal truth to me in any way at all.
No, there are good people and there are bad people, and it doesn't matter what race
and I don't even
gender.
And personally, I don't even think there's good people and bad people. I think there's situations and humans.
Sure.
And I long for the conversation that embraces that. You know? I don't care what your crime is. Like I long for that conversation. But at the same time, this is a very specific moment in history addressing a very specific thing. And I do, you know, I support people who want to maybe simplify these issues in a way that is progressive, you know?
Sure. The thing for me is like, what is the end game? I understand that people are very upset, and this is a significant time for potential change across the country. And Portland is a hotbed, as we've seen in the last week or so.
Right.
I believe there are true protesters who have good intentions and want to peacefully make a change. I also believe that there are extremists who are taking advantage of the situation and starting fires and blowing shit up and doing crazy stuff. And then you've got these federal agents that are being sent in to squash everything. And so there's so much aggression and violence that is beyond what it is supposed to be about. And in the aftermath, you've got...
Well, what is it supposed to be about, though?
It's supposed to be about... It's about people desiring a different environment, and because of the lockdown...
I don't even think we get to say what it's about. I think that's the reality is I go there to try and understand and witness what this is about and what the desired progress is.
Sure.
You know?
I agree. And I'm fully on board with progressive action and change.
Yeah.
But the situation we're in right now in Portland, it just seems like the people who are able to cause extreme mischief are leading the way, and there's so much chaos, no one really knows what to focus on. You've got the mayor of Portland going down there, and maybe he should be there, maybe he shouldn't, I don't know, but he's getting tear gassed, and then that becomes a fucking headline. And it's just every day it's like, what is going to happen next? And what is the end game? What do people desire to have happen, and what is the opposition trying to achieve? It's like, what are we doing?
So some of that's the reality is I'm not like to this date well informed on all of these things, but the reality is there have been huge progresses made in multiple cities all over the US, all over the world now, really. Even just the conscious shift, but there are also tangible things, policies, money being dispersed in productive ways. All that has happened, and I really like to remain honest and open to reality, and so for me to not acknowledge that are there some destructions that have happened in Portland, for example, that maybe aren't directly related or relevant to that progress? Possibly. I mean, I keep all things open, but at the same time, that is so trivial in this whole discussion. And the other violences, I don't feel like there's even time to talk about that stuff. It's just so small, such a small piece of it. And I would feel dishonest if I didn't acknowledge that, But the reality is, if you go witness that, what's happening just in this city, that is extremely disproportionately focused on. It's not even worth talking about.
So your opinion of what you witnessed in downtown Portland with everything that's going on is a place of love and an attempt at progress.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah, 100%. I do, I'm someone who, I like peace. I like negotiation. I like to, my brain goes there. I think about, what is the solution to this conflict or whatever. So there are definitely times where, I do just as an outsider, conceptualize what is the ideal and what is the most peaceful, quickest way to get there. So what's the ideal setup that this society could and should have that is being asked for, and what is the pathway to that? And it isn't something I hear talked about a lot, and there isn't something I can point to that is like, oh, this person has that, I mean, even the mayor going down and getting tear gas, I didn't hear what he said. I wasn't there. But there is a part of me that's like, there are ways to engage in these situations that might be really beneficial. Imagine if something I learned actually in a couples therapy.
Do you continue?
This year is this concept of nonviolent communication. Have you heard of this? And it's interesting because it isn't something that really stuck with me too much personally as the a really I don't know, I like this concept more thinking broadly, and so I've kept this idea of nonviolent communication kept coming up at these protests where I see, okay, it's quickly becomes conflict between force A and B, right?
Yes.
Now imagine if they acknowledged each other on some kind of human, compassionate level. They didn't agree. They didn't want the same things even potentially. But like, God, I would love to see that type of dialogue. But I just want to be clear, that's just me standing there dreaming in my head. That doesn't mean I don't think that
that's what's lacking.
It's inappropriate.
That's what's lacking.
Is it possible?
I don't know if it's possible. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, what happens if aliens show up?
Okay.
What happens if fucking Will Smith in Independence Day happens?
Right.
Are we going to band together and fight the aliens? And I said, nope. Somehow there will be a Republican side and a Democratic side.
Yeah.
Not even a global virus can bring us together. Everybody wants to join a side.
But it also
it's so tribal.
Yeah, but I everyone has different perspectives, and I will fully admit, in a lot of ways, I do live in my own fucking bubble. But even like the overall, I guess major issues right now that everyone's talking about that are focused on in the news, in our lives, whatever it is. We have the Black Lives Matter movement, and we have this pandemic, right? And in both of these things, it's really seen as this basically war. Mm-hmm. That's not what I see in the world at all. When I look at like how overall people have reacted to the pandemic, it's been mostly compassionate. The majority of people across the U.S. are doing things, are like making personal sacrifices for people they don't know. That's the majority.
Sure.
The majority of people are doing things, whether you think it's scientifically right or wrong, they're making sacrifices, whether it's staying home, whether it's wearing a mask when they go to whatever it is, whether it's sharing the resources they have that are tight with their neighbors. I mean, I think the majority of what's happening in the U.S. around the pandemic is people being more generous and compassionate than they have been. And obviously there's conflict about it, but that's such a small percentage. And the same thing with the protests, that most of what you see is people all over the U.S. supporting things. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, I've driven way out into Eastern Oregon, way up into the Olympics, very rural Trump flag waving places. And I still see, whether it's someone's little cardboard sign, Black Lives Matter. I mean, communities that are 100% white and have been white for their entirety. I see stuff like that, and it's just not celebrated or focused on.
No, it's not, because it doesn't get clicks.
But I really think overall there's more positivity on both these things.
I agree. I've noticed and sensed it, just like going to the grocery store, having somebody hold the door for you. Like,
yeah,
people, it feels like people are reaching out for that human interaction where you can let somebody know that you care.
Right.
Because that is what it's about. I spent some time here, at the beginning of COVID, where I was by myself, and I didn't see people for at least a week, maybe a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And you get weird. You want to touch somebody. You want to hug somebody. You want to interact with somebody like you and I are. And that is something I don't think people understood until all this happened, is that you need human interaction.
Yeah.
It's vital to your core.
Totally. Yeah. And take it for granted a lot of the time, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this thing is so
or
crazy.
missed, like there's so many missed opportunities for that connectivity, especially with the technologies we have now.
Yeah.
You know, how many opportunities in a day do you forfeit that for whatever the other thing is? Staring at your phone, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people do have maybe more of an awareness of that. I would hope. I sense it. I mean, you know, since I've been back to work, you know, people walk in, I get someone who it's their first trip out of their house at least every week, you know, and they're just like, wow, you know,
it's like a new world.
They just want to talk about anything, everything. And like they didn't know if they'd see you on the other side. You know, and it's just, it's intimate. It's real. Yeah,
it's one of those things that, like you said, you take for granted, and it's so insane to consider what the world was 6 months ago versus now.
Yeah.
No one had any idea what this could be.
Right.
And it continues to just be unpredictable. Mm-hmm. You have no idea what is actually going to happen in 6 months.
Which no one ever did.
No one ever did, but the stock market was going up.
It's, to certain degrees. I think that's, I mean, not to discredit the like true pain of that for a lot of people. I think overall, just to kind of zoom out and look at Earth as this, you know, little ant farm experiment or whatever, I think it's really healthy for everyone to engage in that unknown, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It is embracing death in a way, like we talked about earlier. It's people don't know what their future holds, and that discomfort is like a really great place for growth, I think.
It forces you to change, and most people are terrified of change.
Mm-hmm. And even if they don't change, like you still have to be more honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And I think people have had time to be reflective about it. I definitely have, you know, had time to like really deeply reflect on things rather than just being in this constant progression.
That is what I think is missing in this age where we are able to be stimulated by something on our phone constantly.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier with creativity. You in general, me as a person, like I come up with the craziest ideas, the best guitar chord progressions, whatever. Right. I come up with the best stuff when I'm standing in line somewhere.
Right.
And I'm just like looking around. I'm like, oh, there's a person, there's a thing, and there's a candy bar, whatever. Like when you are able to daydream and allow your mind to wander, it goes somewhere else. And there's so many people that just, as soon as there's a moment where it's down, you're just instantly right into it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I find myself in that all
I do it
time,
too, yeah.
You know, and to the point that if I do something where habitually I would pick up my phone, I'm really conscious about, oh, interesting, like, look at this opportunity, like, what is this going to feel like, you know? I mean, that's the reality is I'm very aware of those moments now. You know, I think a good example is if you go somewhere without service. You know, when's the last time any of us spent any significant amount of time without service where this device basically becomes useless? I mean, it opens you up differently.
What an insane creation that could connect you to every human in the world.
Disconnect you from every human in the world. Yeah. I mean, it's like all things. You should never look at the device itself. We should look at ourselves, look at what our relationship with it is, and just be conscious of that. I hate bashing any sort of technology. I mean, I think it's just really important to have a reason, for it, and to have like an understanding and assessment continually of what your relationship to it is.
Yeah.
How does it make you feel? What is it doing for you? Why are you using it?
Yeah, because it's great for a lot of reasons.
Sure.
My favorite one is to try to get my brain to recall what it was like, when I was in high school to contact somebody.
So intentional.
I have to call you and say, meet me at the skate park at 3 p.m.
Right.
Then I don't see you for 3 hours.
Yeah.
You either show up at 3 p.m. or you don't.
Right.
I have no idea where the fuck you are.
Right.
If you're there at 3:30, I might not be there.
Right.
That's a different time. And that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is it... it's interesting to consider that. It ties into an uncertainty that we have now. In some ways, I think, you had less information about everything, and you lived with more uncertainty. When you went to a restaurant, you didn't know what it looked like. You didn't know what everything on the menu. You didn't know, their busy times of whatever it is. I think balancing more of that, just discovery and mystery in life is probably pretty important.
But it's a point that we've passed that we can't return to.
I don't think that's true.
You don't think so?
No, not at all.
I could text you tomorrow.
Yeah.
And if you don't respond in 5 minutes, I'm thinking you're mad at me.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
For sure. I mean, so communication has changed in that realm.
Mm-hmm.
But you can still engage with life with a certain spontaneity, boldness, adventure, without overutilizing your access to information. If you're about to meet someone for a first date, you can refrain from doing your hyper research on them or whatever it is. If you're about to go to a national park, you can go there knowing nothing but the name of it and where it is, and get that little 2-page pamphlet from the ranger and live a week with that information. And there's total value to that, I think. So it's like anything. It's balancing it out and understanding what the benefits are and why you're doing it. Are you just gathering information because you're anxious? Well, what does that what does that anxiety have to teach you? Something, probably.
Do you ever try to go back to a place you've been before without looking it up on a map?
I'm fully addicted to using maps on my phone. Yeah, fully.
But this is the first time you've been here. If I asked you to come back in 6 months, if I still lived here, would you attempt to do it without a map?
Sure. This place I could probably.
It's not that bad, right?
But for the most part, no. Because here's the interesting thing about technology is I think your brain only has so much you can be processing at once, right? So back in the day, before you had GPS navigation, that was potentially a big part of your brain, was picking up surroundings, the landmarks, the street signs, whatever it is. And there's certain things that I feel okay about giving to my phone, giving to technology, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it means on the drive over here, I had this computerized Australian voice telling me which turns to take, and it opened me up to whatever daydream that created space for. I don't know. I think there can be good things there.
Well, there are things that are going to happen too, because according to people who are much smarter than me, the reason that our brains were allowed to develop into the size that they are, and we were able to become as intelligent as we are as human beings, we discovered fire. Mm-hmm. And so instead of eating raw meat, we could cook the meat, right? Okay, so you don't have...
Fire, the greatest discovery pre-iPhone.
Thank you. iPhone, the next fire.
The flaming iPhone, the second greatest discovery.
So we discover fire and we start cooking meat. Right. So our teeth and our jaws do not need to be as big as they are to constantly consume this thing. Yeah. And so it allows our jaws to get smaller and our brains to get bigger.
Interesting. I'd trade half my brain for like huge teeth.
Just go back like 100,000 years.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what, I mean, that something will come of this. We have this device that can do everything for us. Right. We don't have to think about
but yeah.
We don't have to think about as many things anymore. We have a device to store all that stuff for us.
Right.
And eventually, with Neuralink, we can have access.
Sponsored, man.
We can have access to the internet.
Right.
We don't need to think about anything. So what is the next step? Then what do we do? If you have access
I don't think of it that way, though. Because thought is so different, you know? Thought is so complex. Thought is not like an equation, you know? It's not always even productive. Sometimes thought is just totally abstract.
Yeah.
You know, supposedly useless. I mean, I guess you could plug that into AI at some point. You know, teach them how to have a dumb thought or a daydream.
That's creativity. How are you going to teach AI to do creativity?
I mean, I think, I don't know. I don't see that outcome ever happening, but potentially. I also try and remember that even the internet is still physical in some way. It is still basically a physical object, you know? It's by that I mean it's something you can blow up, you know? You could blow up physical things around the world and the internet would disappear. So, I don't know, I just try and remind myself of that it isn't like this, you know, wind that came in and is here to stay. It's still just this mechanical thing made of materials at its essence, and I don't know that I don't always subscribe to the idea that like it's here to last, we're in this trajectory forever. I think it's pretty fragile, and I think the systems we're building on the internet are incredibly fragile.
All of it is.
And that is deeply fascinating to me, to think about like, okay, you get a couple more generations into like, everything's on the internet, you know, books are gone, tools are gone, whatever it is. What happens when the internet's gone?
Nobody knows anything.
It's worth thinking about. I mean, just thinking about it physically, I don't know. As soon as I thought about it that way, I was like, nothing physical lasts. That's something I know. You know,
that is a crazy concept because everything exists on hard drives.
Yeah, and it's all physical
in a digital medium. If it gets wiped out, some sort of power grid failure, everything's gone. We go back to tools.
Yeah, I don't know where we go back to. I mean, we don't even necessarily go back to anything. We're just in this new place, just like we were when we discovered the internet.
Yeah, and then we're just lacking the communication tools.
Lacking all kinds of things. Probably lacking a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
But
what if the internet is the downfall of human civilization? What if that the best thing that we thought we ever created kills us in 50 years?
I guess totally possible. But also, I guess, it depends if you consider yourself a part of humanity or if you consider yourself part of planet Earth, or if you can consider yourself part of the universe. Death of humanity, or even a piece of it, is
that's the thing that
is that the end for you, or is that the end
I mean, that's the thing that I always go back to, is that we think we are so special, and we're not.
We're pretty fucking special too.
We think we are.
Look what we're doing. Like, what is this? It's insane.
Seriously, we're talking.
It's a beautiful day outside. There's like rabbits to catch and eat, and we have built this
it's pretty insane.
How and why? It's special.
It's special, but we're not so special that the universe will not dispose of us in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
the universe is eternal. And they don't give a fuck about humans.
Right.
We will disappear.
Yeah.
And people are scared of that. And I understand that. But I mean, how many mass extinctions have there been in the history of this planet?
Probably more in the last few hundred years.
We don't even know. We don't understand what we're capable of. We're just so preoccupied with what Kanye West is doing. Like,
it's important to consider, but also I think the death of humanity, or the death of the earth, is just about as interesting as our own death. It's not that interesting, and really has nothing to do with anything, in my humble opinion. Like, there's just so much to talk about and do while we're here right now. It's important to, I think, hold a place for it. When I walk outside, I'm gonna look both ways before I cross the street, so that it doesn't all end right there. And I think humanity should consider those things, but only to a small degree. The whole death obsession, I don't know, it just doesn't seem valuable at all to me.
Yeah, I agree. You shouldn't focus on that. There's other things happening,
and you don't have that much control. You can make certain calls, but
you could live in a bubble for 80 years and you wouldn't experience anything. I'd rather go get a squirrel suit on and jump off a cliff and potentially die.
And the bubble might kill you, and that's the thing.
Yeah, it's weird. Sometimes I'll be out in the backyard grilling up some chicken or something, drinking a whiskey, and I'll just stare up at the sky and be like, I'm on a planet.
Yeah.
I'm a human. Yeah. I have no idea how I got here.
Yeah.
I'm just a little spermie that got inside an egg, and now I'm a person. What the fuck is that? You have no control over any of that. You don't know why it happened.
Yeah. That's a wonderful feeling.
It's it's unexplainable.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. It's cool.
Yeah, I think any opportunity to have that feeling is valuable, you know. Anything that gives you that perspective, you know, because it's kind of pulling the curtain off of things. The routines we set, the rules we set, they're so fucking arbitrary, you know?
Yeah, like, I mean, you've heard of the butterfly effect, right? Mm-hmm. There's a moment in, I imagine, everybody's life, in human conscience, in the existence of the world, things that happen that completely change everything from there on.
Right.
And what we're living through right now is George Floyd. Mm-hmm. That one situation completely changed the entire world. And the crazy thing is, he has no idea.
Right.
And so for you, can you even label your life in a way that you could say this one decision completely changed everything?
Man, I totally appreciate that perspective, you know, and I can see patterns like that. The reality is I don't see things that way. I really see everything as equal and just an equal piece of I mean, I'm trying to think of what an example in my life might have been.
Okay, but just to play devil's advocate, what if you had continued to stay in high school?
Right.
Would you be talking to me right now?
Who knows? Yeah. But is that decision somehow, does that carry more weight than my decision to put on a green shirt this morning?
Maybe not.
I ultimately think it doesn't. I don't know why. That's just my sensitivity.
You just like green shirts.
I just think everything has that same value. But I understand what you're asking. I don't think there isn't a moment that stands out to me, and you know, maybe I still want to have that moment. Maybe I'm still trying to like.
Maybe it's coming.
That, you know?
Yeah.
No, there really isn't something. Other than my birth, which wasn't a decision, but.
I was going to say that. What about that one? That is, before you came over, I was thinking about that a lot. Not because it's specific to you or anything, but I was just thinking, my brain's fucking stupid. I think about the weirdest stuff. And I was thinking about when you enter that arena, you're swimming with 200 million other people, right?
Yeah.
And then you get in there and somehow through symbiosis, maybe that's the word.
Of what?
You become one with that egg.
Okay.
And then the 249,999,000 other ones, like what is that? Are those other potentials that is such an insane thing to think about, that you were one of that many items that made it. Mm-hmm. And no one knows how or where it comes from. Like that to me is like one of the most important discoveries we could ever make.
Is just understanding the probability, basically.
Yeah, where that soul comes from and how it decides.
Right. I think the more we do understand these things and look into these things, I think we find the evidence outside of it. You know, I think, and without sounding too new agey, I really think it's the best word for it is just energy, and it's just recycled energy.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, whether it's, if you plant the family dog in the yard and you put a pear tree there and all of a sudden you're eating you're eating the dog on this piece of fruit in the backyard.
Best fruit ever.
Totally. I mean, that's just biology, God, life, however you want to understand it. I think that's just what's happening. So it's like, these millions of sperm, right, all rushing for the egg, and this one connects. You can look at all those options who didn't make it and imagine them like, what would they be like as adults? What would their names and personalities be like? Or it's just these little bits of energy that go back into this huge energetic system and find outlets somewhere else. And maybe that's really how I think about it. It's hard for me to see it on just a human plane, I guess.
I like that. It all just becomes part of the one.
Yeah, it's something.
It's just a thing.
It's like water is such a great example.
Yeah.
Such a wonderful visual cycle of this, Where was the water collected to make this sour mash that I'm going to process through my organs, pee in my front yard when I get home, that's going to evaporate to wherever.
In the front yard.
In the front yard. Yeah, I live in the woods.
It's eternal.
Yeah.
For billions of years. It's eternal.
Mm-hmm. And I think everything is that way. So it's hard to really value one thing over another, or even see moments as special or things as special. I'm not always comfortable talking this way, but really, that's the thing. Everything is special. Everything is equal. Everything is connected,
It is, but it's also forgettable. How many people have died over the course of this planet?
Right.
And that just goes back to the one.
What do you mean?
Those souls, those humans, those individuals.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, I guess...
It's so hard to comprehend. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to process it.
Sure, yeah. I don't even know that I have a specific point. It's just whatever observation I've tried to gather in my limited time with my limited scope on this vast place called planet Earth in the universe. Whatever the fuck that is, and however far that goes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good spot to end it.
Okay.
My mind exploded.
Totally.
Dude, I'm so glad you came over.
Me too. Cheers.
Cheers.
It's great to see you.
Yeah, you too.